Dollar Save Club went from a viral video shot on a budget of $4,000 to $1 billion acquisition by Unilever in 4 years. And then Unilever tried to grow it and could not. The founder left in 2021, and then 2 years later, Unilever sold it off. And then their own CEO publicly called the acquisition an unsuccessful attempt to move away from their core. So this video is a case study in two halves. The first half, what Dollar Save Club built between 2011 and 2026 that made them worth $1 billion. The playbook, the best D2C subscription brands are basically still trying to copy today. And then the second half, what happened after that ruined everything. And why that decline is actually the strongest proof that what made Dollar Save Club strong originally was the point all along. And I hope you'll find this instructive. By the way, if you don't know me, my name is George and I run YOCTO. We are Klaviyo Elite partners, top 44 up to over 16,000 agencies globally. I've worked with multiple subscription businesses, including brands doing 9 figures a year in subscription revenue. In my eyes, there's 4 pillars to Dollar Save Club's peak era. There's the acquisition model, a subscription model, lifecycle marketing, and then of course the brand itself. So I'm gonna walk you through this and you can copy what worked and hopefully avoid the trap that killed everything at the end. So let's get into it. So everyone knows the original viral video. So I'm gonna start there. So I'm gonna play a few seconds in case you haven't seen this.
I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are grit.
I'm gonna stop here. And this, again, $4,000 or so to produce. The founder himself directed it, basically filmed it in one day. And then in the first 48 hours after launch, they did like 12,000 orders. That's 12,000 paying subscription orders from this single video. And of course, you can say they got lucky. And everything in business rather has an element of luck. But at the same time, it wasn't just luck alone. Because, people point at this video and they say, okay, it was funny, so it went viral. But there's tons of brands publishing funny videos and they don't reach $1 billion valuation, right? So what actually made this video different, I think you can encapsulate like this. It is basically a complete sales argument in just a few seconds. And if you watch it again through this lens, you'll see what I mean. It opens addressing common objections to razors. It's gonna, for example, say, do you really think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, and a back scratcher and 10 blades, which is really about the quality? Boom, gone. Then the price, $1 a month. Basically, there's no price objection anymore, right? Like it's just gone. Shipped at your door, demolishes the convenience objection. And then, all of this is baked with humor, which makes you want to keep watching. And in a nutshell, it's not just funny. Funny may get people to watch, but it's not going to get people to buy. What actually makes people buy here is this conversion element underneath everything else. The humor basically is what delivers the conversion argument, but it is the conversion argument that actually gets people to buy. And then beyond just this viral moment, of course, it brought eyeballs, right? But it's not that they went viral and then they rode the wave forever. No, they actually built a referral program baked into the subscriber experience itself. So basically every new member got credit for bringing other people in. So they had a financial incentive really to tell everybody, which turned every single subscriber into a distribution channel. And I genuinely think this is still quite underused in D2C. Brands launch with paid ads and they will have their organic social, but they don't really focus on this extra referral layer, which I think they should. The third piece that I want to flag for you is the product itself. Like I'm going to show you a few pictures here so that you actually see the packaging. I like saving with $1 razor. No one ever. Gamble on horses, not your face. No, it's just basically meant to start conversations. It's meant to get you to go to your friends group and say, look at this. It's funny. It felt like an actual friend sent you something. People would take photos of this, they would post it on Instagram, they would talk about it at gatherings, etc. because the box itself was part of the experience, right? So the lesson is not make your unboxing funny. The lesson is your product experience should be thought out and it should give the customer something worth sharing. It can be a joke, it can be an insight, it can be something that makes your brand, but it should be sparking conversations. So when you combine all of those things, that the fact that of course it was funny, but there was also very good conversion elements beneath. There was a referral engine meant to in referrals through incentives, and then the product itself was share-worthy. Was it really luck that got them to go viral, or was it actually a well-designed system? So you don't really need to have a funny viral video. You actually need to have those mechanics underneath. Clear sales argument, packaged in a way that will get people to watch without triggering the defense system of this is just marketing, I'm not going to pay attention, then a layer wherein you can reuse the customers you acquire and get them to bring you more customers, and then a product experience that just makes this super easy and intuitive for them to do. If you combine those three things, you are going to get your own word of mouth action going on. But the real genius was not just, the virality. It was what happened after someone actually purchased. So they initially launched with 3 tiers: $1 a month, $6 a month, $9 a month. And, you might be thinking, well, how could they make money with $1? And the answer, of course, was that they were losing money. It was what you call a loss leader. So they were losing money on it deliberately because the purpose of the $1 tier wasn't to make money on Razor. The purpose was to make it impossible to say no. Basically, every possible reason that someone would say no to was just gone. Eliminated price friction completely. It's just $1, right? Like you can cancel any time. If it's just $1, what am I actually losing? So the decision to buy and give it a try wasn't really a decision. It was almost like a reflex at that point, which meant that the conversion rate was dramatically higher than any direct competitor could offer, basically. So the $1 Razor wasn't just like a product, it was like the entry point to the system. And once you went into the system, that's when they made money, because they started launching Save Butter, post-save wipes, and hair products, and face wash, and toothpaste, like a whole line of bathroom products, each one designed to get added to your existing subscription, each one designed to increase your AOV without them having to pay to, reacquire you, because they already had you, basically. They already had your card, they already had your address. They just needed to give you a reason to add one more thing to that next shipment. And they made that as frictionless as possible. Boom, one click, it appeared on your next shipment. This is really the same principle that makes Amazon Subscribe and Save so effective. There's no cognitive load, you just add it. And if you look at the retention data that they had at their peak, they were significantly below industry average for boxes. Like I think low single digits monthly, when the category average is like 2 to 3 times higher. Why? Not because the razors were better. Gillette sold better razors, objectively, by most blind tests. That wasn't the point. It was because, again, the low price meant that they never really had to, say, is this really worth it, right? Nobody questioned the value. You barely noticed the charge. It was like, who cares, And then the automatic replenishment meant that I didn't have to reacquire. So the friction to stay was actually zero. The expansion of the products meant that they kept building on the relationship. Basically, a customer who started with one razor subscription was 6 months in, getting razors plus Save Butter plus wipes plus face wash plus all sorts of things, which increased their investment also into the brand. So what does this mean for you? It means that having a subscription model, it's not just about billing recurringly. It's creating a system really that's meant to maximize the value of each customer that you acquire. And, they did so through a loss leader and then through product expansion. Today, this is much less feasible because the cost to acquire a customer is way different than it were back in the day. But the same idea of how can I make it easy to say yes by stacking so much value or making the value feel such a no-brainer that basically it's a no-brainer still applies. And then how can I make it frictionless? That still applies. And then how can I over time monetize more? That still applies. So there's no doubt in my mind that this wasn't just a viral or a lucky moment. It was actually a very well-designed system that brought them the success that they had. Now let's talk about lifecycle marketing, because that's what my company does, and I feel very strongly about the things I'll say. What most companies do. This might be your company, it might be the companies you work with. You send a thank you email after somebody purchases, and then of course you're gonna have a couple of emails, which usually summarized as founder story, a couple of tips about the product, review request, cross-sell. That's what most of you do. And then basically there's silence for your subscribers, right? Until the next charge hits. It's not really good because first of all, it feels like you're ignoring the customer, and then boom, you're just billing them. And then the second thing is you are not really replenishing the fuel that brought the customer to your own brand, if you will. Because, when someone purchases something, they have a certain level of investment into the decision that they made, which at the beginning is not perhaps too strong, and then it starts depleting over time. Unless you do something to replenish that energy that the consumer has, they will inevitably churn. So Dollar Save Club actually did something very clever after somebody purchased, which I would love to see more brands actually trying to implement. I'm going to show you an example. They had this wonderful magazine, essentially, that they would send. And this had, of course, a digital version, but also a print version that they would send you. And then, of course, this was something that you could have in your bathroom, and then you would maybe read it. And again, what does this do? It keeps the brand top of mind. It replenishes this initial investment and emotional energy that you have for the brand. And it gives you a reason to be excited for your next shipment. It gives you, basically, frankly, a reason to just shopping from this company beyond just the actual actual razors and the products themselves. So this little thing that they did, which, you can see this as IP, brand IP, it can be digital IP or physical IP, is what makes this subscription experience categorically different / better than just getting like some razors alone. It is just a completely different experience. And they called it the bathroom minutes. For you, it might be something else. Probably it's not going to be bathroom minutes, but I think the same principle can apply to basically every single brand. And I wish more people tried to implement this as well. But all of that only worked because of this last pillar, which is the brand itself, the brand identity. Because, of course, the razors were like decently good and like the pricing was great and all of this, but it's not just that people bought for those reasons. They also started like identifying with the company. So this is what makes everything else stronger. And it starts with a very consistent voice. Dollar Save Club talked to customers the same way. Every email, every ad, every packaging insert, every piece of customer survey response had this same irreverent, clever voice. Basically a guy who's too honest at the dinner table, but you love him for it. And again, if you see what a lot of other brands do, they have this voice in their brands and then that other voice in their emails and then that third voice on the website and then a fourth voice in customer service. So this is bad. Dollar Save Club sounded like the same person all across the board. And it's that consistency that makes the brand feel like a real person, not just a company that's trying to sell you something. And once the brand feels like a real person, the dynamic between consumer and brand really starts to change. The second thing that they did very well is that they had an actual enemy. Every strong brand has an enemy. Dollar Save Club's enemy was the overpriced razor industry, specifically Gillette. This wasn't subtle at all. It was basically the whole pitch. Stop paying $30 a month on brand name razors. Don't buy expensive blades with ridiculous technology that you don't need, right? Having a clear enemy like this does multiple things. First of all, it gives customers something to rally around, right? Like buying from Dollar Save Club wasn't just a purchase, it was them saying, I'm not falling for stupid marketing that gets me to buy something I don't need, which turns the buying decision into a values decision, which makes the decision much more sticky. The second thing it does, and it does it internally, is that it gives creative direction, right? Like every email, every campaign can punch in the same direction. The enemy almost becomes the creative engine, which is what makes the brand memorable. When you see an enemy-driven brand in the wild, you remember it because it's taking a stance. And most brands are afraid to take a position, which is why, sadly, most brands are forgettable. If you're trying to build a brand that people remember and then identify with, you have to figure out what you're against. Not like in a mean way. You don't need to call out your competitors directly, but it can be in like a values way. What are the industry standards or defaults that you refuse to accept? What's the status quo that maybe deserves to be challenged? If you figure this out, everything else becomes much easier. Now, community, the name says it, right? Like Dollar Save Club. It's not Dollar Save Company, Dollar Save Storage Club, which means what? Every subscriber is a member. And members behave differently than customers. Members advocate, they refer, they defend the brand when it's attacked. And I'm willing to bet that most of their referral volume wasn't just coming from the financial incentive alone. It was coming from members recommending the brand to friends because recommending Dollar Save Club was a way of saying something about themselves. I'm the kind of person who's too smart to overpay for razors. And this is true because that's why a lot of companies don't see that great success with referral programs. Why? Because there's like no reason to refer. It's just a 10% off. So the consistency that Dollar Save Club had across every touch point, from the packaging, from the inserts in the box, from the emails, from the social comment, from the customer service, is what made it so easy to have this sense of community. And if you want to see this from a, let's say, differentiation / defensibility standpoint, this consistency is what makes you hard to compete with, because they can copy your landing page and they can copy your creatives. In fact, they probably do copy your creatives, but they can't copy consistency across every touch point for years, right? So brand is not a logo. It's not a color palette. Brand is having a clear enemy and a community, and then knowing what you stand for and knowing how you sound, and then doing this over and over and over again for years. That's what makes people feel like they're actually part of something. Okay, now the second half of the story, because this is, I guess, what most case studies on Dollar Save Club stop. My perspective, what happened next is arguably even more instructive than what I just covered. So in 2026, Unilever acquired Dollar Save Club for $1 billion in cash. And at that point, the company was doing 225 million in revenue. So that's like 5 times a revenue multiple, which is like absolutely massive for that type of company. And just a few years later, October 2023, Unilever sells the majority stake to a private equity firm called Nexus Capital. capital. The sales price, undisclosed, but Unilever kept a 35% minority stake, which is often what happens when a seller can't get the price they want and has to hold some equity just to, get the deal closed. And, their CEO publicly said, unsuccessful attempt to move away from our core. So what actually happened? Everything I walked you through so far got broken one by one. Just take a look at the website today. So silky smooth results, no matter what you save. It looks super neutered, honestly, like nothing like the original brand looked like. And then if you just start looking into it more, you are gonna see that it's just nowhere near what it used to be. There's like the women's section here. And why did it happen? It happened because, in a nutshell, Unilever didn't want to be in a public fight with P&G, basically. But again, the enemy and the strong stance and the branding was the creative engine. And without it, everything eventually went neutered and generic. So that changed. And then they changed the distribution strategy. They went to retail, Walmart, Target, and like many others. And the D2C first identity, the whole point of being a club, was this direct relationship. That was no longer there. The product was sitting on a retail shelf next to Gillette. So where's the us versus them story anymore? It just stopped being true. Personality started being stripped away from emails. And then, priorities, frankly, started moving to standardizing and like controlling costs, etc., which, together, in a nutshell, they basically undid the flywheel that made this first high valuation and success that the brand had even possible in the first place. So people still needed razors, the subscription mechanics were still there, the email list was there, but the growth stopped. And it stopped because what made Dollar Shave Club stopped being there. They were not worth $1 billion because of the razors that they were selling, basically. They were worth $1 billion because those elements that we went through were running, reinforcing each other and creating a flywheel that kept spinning. And then once those elements were taken away, the whole thing crashed. And, that's the trap that a lot of D2C brands fall into once they start to scale. They stop really staying true to what made them worth the scale in the first place. And then managing the whole totality of the business, like the acquisitions, the supply chain, it's just too daunting as you grow, that oftentimes there's just nobody to look after the subscriber journey from the very first touch point, meaning the ads, to the landing pages, to the cart and checkout, post-purchase, emails, and then all the way to retention and loyalty, which creates this lack of consistency that is so important to everything else that I walked you through. So if this resonates, if you own a brand or work at a brand that makes a decent amount of revenue and you want to take things to the next level, but you just find it daunting to keep up with everything that has to happen and to put things in order and in place and actually start optimizing consistently the way Dollar Shave Club did, then there is a link to book a call with us down below. And it's going to be a conversation. It's not going to be a hard pitch. I'm not going to try to sell you what we do. I'm going to ask you questions about what you're doing. What, if anything, have you tried? And then if I sense that we might be able to help, I'll ask you to give me access to your platforms, whether that's Shopify, your subscription platform, or your lifecycle marketing platform like Klaviyo. Then I'm going to take a look at what you have, and we're going to tell you where you think your focus should be, so that you can do exactly what Dollar Shave Club did, which is to build a flywheel that compounds in value over and over and over again, so that this valuation can grow, maybe not to $1 billion, but higher than it is today, and so that you can have longevity into the business, A, or B, the big exit that you might be looking for. So if you found this video helpful, and if you want to apply the same ideas, the same eyes, and the same lenses to your company, there's a link to book a call down below. I'd love to speak to you. If, on the other hand, you feel like you're not ready yet, please subscribe and share this video with people that can benefit from it. Thank you for watching.